I'm joined now by Emma Barnett, who's women's editor at the Telegraph, and Jonathan Russell, political liaison officer, the counter-extremism think tank, the Quilliam Foundation. Very good afternoon to you. Emma Barnett, if I could start with you, are these vulnerable girls who've been brainwashed on social media by supporters of this so-called murderous death cult?
Well, brainwashed, we don't know. How do you know what's going on in someone's brain? I think what I found surprising is immediately when women go off to join what we believe in these three girls' instance, ISIS in Syria, we think of them as girls who don't have their own volition in their own hands. They aren't able to control their destiny. We immediately see them as victims rather than the way that we see men, which is we see them as people who've decided to go off and join ISIS. We view them with a mixture of fear and hatred and potentially sometimes pity. But the females who've gone, we immediately see them as vulnerable, brainwashed. Even the way Sky News has been running the story, missing girls. They're not actually missing. I mean, maybe we don't know their exact whereabouts right now, but they haven't been abducted. They went and bought a plane ticket, as far as we know, of their own volition. This is a big move to make, and they have gone off, left everything they know behind, and decided, as far as we can tell, as far as their families can tell, to join a murderous cult.
Doesn't their age have a part to play in this, and the way certainly that us and other news outlets are reporting this? They're 15 and 16 years old, they're young, they're impressionable, they are vulnerable, their families want them home. There's now a police operation to try and track them down in Turkey, joining in with the Turkish authorities. And that certainly has a part to play in how these particular girls is portrayed, doesn't it?
I'm not saying young people who radicalise online aren't vulnerable. I'm saying two things. One, the way we treat men and women who go is vastly different. The language is different. I don't recall Sky News, the Telegraph where I were, anybody else carrying reports in the same way as when girls go or when men go. The way you've carried the strap for the last 3 or 4 days, missing girls, they are not abducted. I just want to repeat that. So I think there's a difference between the way we create sort of the gender role in this. And secondly, I think we need to keep in mind that it's very easy. When I wrote an article about this yesterday, that's why you're having me on, and it went completely viral, and lots of people reacting to it said, Emma, they're vulnerable, they've been groomed. Well, I've spoken to Melanie Smith, who's the only person who is creating a directory of Western women who have gone to join ISIS. She has 90 people she's tracking day in, day out. People saying it's like they've been groomed. They're giving comparisons to being sexually groomed. They're not being sexually groomed, according to Melanie Smith. She works at King's College London. They are actually being encouraged in the main by other women who have gone, and these Western women are typically very well educated, and they are doing so of their own volition. They are encouraging them to come for two reasons that we overlook a lot of the time. Number one, to join a sisterhood, and number two, to live what they see as a perfect life as Muslims in the caliphate, which is being presented as a utopia. So they are self-radicalising as well as being radicalised. But there is a difference between reading this stuff, believing in it, and then actually taking the very, very big step to get on a plane, leave your family behind, and go and join ISIS.
Jonathan Russell, are we treating men and women who go out and join Islamic State differently and perhaps wrongly?
Yes, I would agree with Emma there that the media does seem to focus differently depending on whether it's young men or young women. However, it does seem exactly that the radicalisation process is pretty similar for both men and women. It is a process of exploitation, really. As well as being a self-radicalising element. So I think, although we have the same word, there are two different things going on there, and that's why we talk about people being vulnerable to radicalisation. Radicalisers know exactly the entry points to exploit within these vulnerable people. However, of course, yes, they do have free will, and it seems in this case that they have decided to escalate to go and travel to join ISIL of their own volition. So I would also agree that we shouldn't only be talking in terms of vulnerability. I think the important things to remember here, though, are that jihadism as an ideology, which we've been saying for a very long time, is accessible and is appealing to both men and women. And although ISIL will see different roles for the two genders, fighting predominantly for men and more propaganda roles and crucially state-building roles as wives and mothers for women, the appeal is through this exploitation of religion in this ideology, fusing together religion and politics and selling that as a solution to all of these girls' problems. Now, actually, non-violent Islamists will agree with them on this point. They see gender issues very, very similar, regardless of whether you're an entryist Islamist, like the Muslim Brotherhood, like what we saw in the Trojan Horse affair in Birmingham last year. So too revolutionary Islamists, and so too these jihadists that we see most prominently in ISIL. I believe Islamism has a woman problem, and that's where the attention should be, rather than simply on the media portrayal of them.
Do you think that, Jonathan Russell, the idea that they've been groomed, that Emma Barnett takes exception to, has any validity in that actually they are vulnerable young girls, that maybe that they're being groomed by people of the same sex, by other young women who've gone out there and are trying to sell them a rosy picture of what life might be like if they join the caliphate, if they become jihadi brides, and actually that there is a parallel to be drawn there?
I think to talk about grooming is in fact helpful because of the parallels with other social ills such as child sexual abuse or even domestic violence. I think is an appropriate parallel to make because of this exploitation within the radicalisation process. However, you're absolutely right to touch on the fact that very often it is women doing the recruitment. We know that Aqsa Mahmood, another female jihadist from Britain, had contact with at least one of these three girls and was instrumental, we think, in the radicalisation and certainly in the recruitment and the mechanical elements of getting them over there, whether that's linking them up with an ISIL fixer present in Turkey. And this reveals what ISIL plans for women. They really do take advantage of English-speaking recruits and women. So crucial is the socialisation aspect in the recruitment element. It takes quite a lot to escalate from a radicalisation process to doing something about it. And in that element, being able to humanise your recruiter, your charismatic recruiter, your exactly as Emma said, that in this sisterhood element, that's a crucial part too. So I unfortunately fear that this will become an exponential problem. Yes, 550 British women have gone so far. 500 of the 3,000 Western women have gone, but that provides a much larger base for recruiters and for radicalisers to call on other Western women in coming months.
Emma Barnett, we certainly know that some of the men who've returned or tried to return from fighting with Islamic State have become very disillusioned and were terrified, in fact, when they were there. Do you have any sympathy for these girls, whether or not you view them as victims, that they may have been painted a picture of how life might be like when they go out there, and in fact it could be very drastically, horrifically different. It could be very brutal. They could be, subjected to all kinds of horrific attacks when they actually get out there and they see what the reality of life is like?
Of course I have some sympathy in the sense of I've also heard about the fact that one of the girls has been putting messages up on her blog that then get taken down quite quickly about how she misses her mother, about how it's quite cold out there. She says to other women, bring warm clothes if you're going to come here. They don't sell any. She's immediately, been expected with her jihadi guy or jihadi hipster, as they're being called, with their rings and all these things that are coming out online, to have a load of babies that she probably hasn't been ready for. I have some sympathy for that. But where I have limited sympathy, if these girls were on, growing up in East London, were in a gang and then joined that gang because they liked what the gang was doing, whether that gang was, chopping the heads off people who were innocent or not, we'd probably put them in jail, I imagine. And what I would say is, this isn't like the horrors of Nazi Germany, where after the war we really found out what was going on. We really found out the state of the concentration camps. ISIS is one of the most sophisticated terrorist units anyone's ever come across. So much so they've got the time to edit and cut together sort of beautifully shot murderous videos of what they're doing to innocent people, whether it's chopping off the heads of people who've gone out there to help Syrians, or people who are just Christians who are minding their own business, trying to earn a living. They know what's going on in these countries. These girls can see these videos, and yet they have still gone. So forgive me if my sympathy is slightly tempered.
Emma Barnett, thank you very much for joining us. Also, Jonathan Russell, thank you. Apologies, I know you wanted to come in, but we are out of time. Thank you.